the impromptu show today. Excuse me. But we just wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about the new Spider-Man show that popped up on Disney this week. I know a lot of people are talking about it, and a lot of people are interested in it. And I thought it was pretty cool. I just wanted to, just take a few minutes to talk about Spider-Man and his cool history on TV and stuff like that. And my boy Alex is here, and he printed up a cool little shot of the first episode there. How's it going, Alex?
Pretty good, pretty good. Did you watch both episodes?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack with them. So you liked them a lot?
I have to say, I'm pretty easy to please, and in my personal thing in life, things are generally either good or they're not, and I thought it was good.
I generally liked them, but there's a few things that I definitely would like to talk about. Like first thing, first thing, how much is your love for Spider-Man?
Well, okay, Spider-Man is, I mean, he is Marvel's character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, say, he's like the X-Men and Spider-Man are Marvel's, you can break it down. You know what I mean? Like the most important value, like commercially or whatever. And when a little kid walks into a store, you know what I mean? He's going to either ask for a Batman toy or a Spider-Man toy, probably. You know what I mean? Because those are just like the premier devices of those things, and Spider-Man just happens to hold that category. And, I love that characters like Spider-Man and Batman can always be reinvented for each generation, I guess, is one of the things I really appreciate about characters like that,
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the reinvention of the origin of Spider-Man and whether or not you thought it was good. By the way, this is going to be a completely spoiler episode. So if you haven't watched the episodes and you don't want spoilers, I don't think either one of us could talk about it without spoilers. So if you haven't watched the episodes and you want to and not get spoiled, then check us out at a later time and you can join the conversation. But my biggest thing, like right off the bat, was they changed the origin of how he gets his powers.
Yeah, no, first of all, just thank you for saying that, Alex, because we probably, I probably should have mentioned that there would definitely be spoilers in this.
Yeah.
So I'm a little new at this stuff. But yeah, for sure, there's definitely spoilers coming up. But, honestly, it is a shift, right? But at the same time, it's not a shift. Okay, so he's still getting bitten by an irradiated spider. And it's really not any different than say the Miles Morales version of it or whatever, where it's, I think, in anything probably that was probably where they drew inspiration from it, because it is a backpack and a spider in the mold, or not, it's not the mold, but the Spider-Verse film or whatever, the first one, or I can't think of what it's called. I know the Spider-Verse is the second one.
Spider-Verse.
Yeah. But the first one is whatever it is. But you know what I mean? It has a similar scene where he's putting his backpack on, I think, or reaching for his backpack in that film, and he gets bit by the spider. So I wouldn't even doubt that they probably drew inspiration from that movie, because let's face it, that is one of the more innovative things we've seen done with Spider-Man, in recent years, really in films in general, especially animated films. I thought, the two Spider-Man movies were stunning and beautiful versions of what you could do with animation in this era, because many people are falling back on the same device again and again and again and again. Everything wants to look like Pixar or something like that, and it's just art form that people should be pushing
We'll definitely
forward.
get into the animation, because I have a lot to say about the animation. But you're right. As you know, my last two reviews were of alternate universe characters, and I think that's okay. Like if you have an alternate Batman or an alternate like the Ultimates Wolverine that I went over, I'm more on board with that. And actually, the change in the origin really doesn't bother me that much. It perplexes me though. Like you were talking about how they have these the Spider-Man movies with not Toby Maguire, what's his name? Um, and like they have these already set origins. I don't understand why they deviated from the origin if they already have these movies already set up, and you would
Well,
think they would want to continue on.
I think I know why they do it, and essentially they're trying to do these kind of things. And I mean, I read a little blurb from the creator of the series or whatever. You know, who knows how accurate this kind of stuff is? But the guy had just mentioned that they had made a few major switches on characters here or there, and that they were just hoping that, because there is such a long lore of just like Batman and that kind of thing, even Superman, all those guys that have been around for a long time, they all fall into that category where anytime you're resetting up the idea, everybody knows what's going to happen. You know what I mean?
Right, right,
And I think they're just trying to create a slight atmosphere of being like, oh, well, maybe we're showing you a version where you don't know exactly how things are going to play out. You know what I
right.
mean? To kind of keep people maybe a little bit, especially, maybe appeal like that to some, older fans, like me or you who've seen it again and again and again. And then
Yeah,
also maybe appealing to younger fans who don't know anything about it, and are just seeing like a version that's fairly close texturally to the
right,
original idea, but also their own, identifiable version of it. You
right.
know what I mean?
Right. I'm
I thought,
wondering if this might lead into a complete reboot for the movies, because
um,
they kind of left open in the last movie that it could be rebooted pretty easily.
I mean, well, I think that always goes like for something like Spider-Man or like I said, Batman or Superman or any of those things, they could just be rebooted endlessly, like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
just got to give it a few years to breathe, like a slice of
Right.
cheese or whatever, like a good
Right,
breathe,
right. But when
like
you've got when you've got billions of dollars online for a franchise, I would think that they would have a full concrete plan as to what they want to do with the character. I mean, Disney's obviously they still don't even own Spider-Man in the movies. I'm
yeah.
wondering. I don't know if Disney owns the cartoon rights. Do you know that?
I don't know, but I haven't even thought about that if there's a Sony logo, at the front. But
Right,
see, like,
right.
yeah, it could but I want to say there probably has to be some sort of conjunction going on because Sony Animation makes the Spider Verse films. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
that's
they
true.
must
That's
have
true.
some copy to
That's
the
true.
rights to the animation as well as
Yeah,
to the but it could be something between film and television, you know what I mean, like
yeah, yeah.
maybe Disney might have reverted television rights or something for original properties, or you know what I mean, because those
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
things could get into such minute details. That's why like there's a little thing going across the internet right now about how the Schuster family, their
yeah.
foundation, the Schuster Foundation is suing DC Comics
Right,
for
right.
international rights to release the film because apparently he owns rights in like some places in Europe and some
Yeah,
places in
in
Canada and
Canada,
stuff like that.
Canada too. Yeah, yeah. So
So
that'll be weird to see how that unfolds. Um,
yeah,
but
I
yeah,
mean, like yeah,
the origin doesn't really bother me at all. Nothing really bothers me that they changed in the cartoon. It's just something to think about as to why they did it and stuff like that. Even though I'm an older dude like you, um, you have to keep your ideas fresh. Being artists as we are, you have to keep your ideas fresh, and you have to keep an open mind on a lot of these things. Um, but some of these different changes we're definitely going to talk about. Um, so let's get into the story. Let's talk about the story first. Did you like
well
the
real
story?
quick real quick I want to say like I know like like say at the end of the first episode when
Yeah.
he's walking into his apartment or whatever, and you think it's going to be Tony Stark, right? You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
that's what you thought, right? That's what
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
And then it was Norman Osborn or
Right.
Osborn, right?
Osborne. Yeah.
Um, and I was surprised. Were you surprised?
I was a little bit surprised because they had. I was a little bit not surprised because they had Harry um,
Right.
before that, and I kind of just assumed that they were going to kind of follow the first movie's um, way of doing things, where did they introduce Harry first in the first Tobey Maguire movie, or did they introduce
We,
Norman first?
well, yeah, because in that film they're friends already at the beginning of the
Were
film.
they friends already? Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it kind of follows that a little bit. So I kind of had an inkling that they were gonna introduce Norman.
but
But the
if
first,
you're paying attention, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But if you're paying
yep.
attention, they rotoscoped that scene from the film. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like if
did
you,
they?
yeah, if you go back and look at that exact scene, because like remember Peter's walking in with the VCR or whatever, and he's like,
Oh,
oh my
yeah,
god, remember he tells Mr. Stark that like, oh, I just found this today, brand new
yeah,
or whatever,
yeah,
went out the bedroom, and it shows him finding the VCR or whatever out in the trash right before he walks up, and then he sees the car, and remember he goes when he walks in, he goes, oh, whose car is that out there, and he thinks that Tony Stark is sitting on the couch or whatever, but they completely rotoscoped the scene, so I honestly thought it was going to be Tony Stark. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of,
all
and
right.
even
Well,
had the same piece of music
yeah.
playing. You know what I mean?
Since you're bringing up the rotoscope, um, what did you think about the animation?
Well, like I personally, okay, like I'm a hand drawn animation addict. You know what I mean? Like it's funny because I just sat through Fire and Ice last night. Like
Yeah,
and we have YouTube Premium or whatever, so there's a
yeah,
bunch of free movies on there, and they have it on there in 4K, like this really beautiful version, and it's just like I was like, um honestly, I was like taking some like photographs of figures and stuff like that for like that upcoming Crom stuff I'm gonna be doing
yeah,
with you guys or
yeah.
whatever. And I was just like, whoa, as I was like freezing it, I was like like kind of stunned at the level of beauty. And like, I mean, like
Oh,
those
yeah,
images are like oil paintings, dude. Like you could just freeze like almost any image on that movie, and they're like literally like it's like a Frazetta painting almost. And the
oh,
backgrounds
yeah,
are literal like gorgeous oil paintings. And then
yeah,
the figure work is so strong, because they're rotoscoping and they're, going for that full Frazetta vibe that like it's just like it culminates in like an almost flawless, like living oil painting kind of thing. And then you wonder like, why aren't, this is freaking 35 years ago, you know what I mean? Like 40 years ago now that they made this thing. And it's like, why isn't anybody else like pushing the boundaries and doing new stuff like that? And then you see something like Spider-Verse and it's so good. Like I thought that was a really great film. And you think like, dude, like these guys are eating your lunch, Disney, and you own the entire Marvel, catalog of things. And you know what I
yeah,
would be doing if I was Disney? I would be doing like I would put that hand drawn like Disney princess goodness into recreating the Marvel origins looking exactly like the style of comic they were of their time. You know what I mean,
yeah,
dude? Like
yeah. Oh,
do a
yeah, that would be
Captain
awesome.
America origin animated film that has that Disney level animation that looks exactly like the Jack Kirby comic, you know what I mean, from its era and so
Yeah.
forth. You know what I mean? That
Oh,
would be
yeah,
so rad, right?
yeah.
But Disney's too dumb to even do something stupid that's sitting right in front of their face like that. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, I'm sure it's way more cost effective to do it the way they're doing it. But I do really enjoy the what if animation. I really do like that.
okay, I was going to say, like, now, having said that, I know that this is sort of the new mark of how it's done. The X-Men is done like this. I don't know if you watch Blue Eye Samurai on Netflix, but
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
amazing. And
yeah,
that's done like this. You know what I mean? What If is done like this. It's just kind of like the new, I guess, boundary where you could have a certain level of profit. I mean, not profit. What am I saying? Like cost effectiveness, and
yeah,
still reach
yeah,
a certain level of like artistic, brilliance with what you're trying to do without it costing a fortune, I guess. You know what I mean? Because they're essentially
yeah,
just like setting up 3D figures, and then they put the cell animation on top of it, one frame at a time or whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely. Well, you mean the modern day the way they do it now?
Another way, like we're going to do it, like the way they're doing Spider-Man, the way they're doing
Yeah,
like Blue Eye Samurai. It's a
yeah,
it's a 3D model. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. There's no
but then
cells.
they're laying the they're laying the cell animation, whatever fabric or whatever you call it, skin. You know what I mean? Like on
It's
top of
not
it to
just
make it look like a hand drawn thing or whatever, even though it's all 3D stuff these days.
you don't think it's all digital?
Well, I do, but someone out there is drawing like, like they're drawing the hand cell look or whatever, you know what I mean? And they've
Yeah,
created
yeah,
like a skin or whatever, you know what I mean? And they have to do that for each thing, whether it's like, oh,
yeah.
Peter Parker in his costume, or
Right,
Spider-Man or
right.
whatever,
Yeah, see,
this
I
guy
think
in his
that's
high school jacket or in his like his football uniform or whatever, you know what I mean? But
right, right. See, I think that I don't know for sure, but I think that's all computer digital stuff.
well, it is.
I
I
don't
think
think
someone.
there's
Well, obviously, I think someone creates it on
I
like.
don't think anything's hand drawn with like paper or
Well, no, but
a
it's being
regular
hand
cell or
drawn.
anything.
Well, when I say hand drawn, I just mean it's being drawn like on somebody's iPad or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right, right,
Somebody's drawing it from their creating that look or whatever. Whoever
right,
it is
right.
like
Oh yeah,
is
yeah,
running
yeah,
the art. The what am I thinking? The art direction for it. You know what I mean? Created that style, which is sort of like this real cool version of John Romita Senior. And
yeah,
like
yeah,
Steve Ditko or like Jack Kirby, kind of like all smashed in there just a little bit,
yeah,
but
yeah,
mostly it's like the John Romita thing, Which one of the things I really loved was the way they did Norman and Harry's hair,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's how it was originally drawn, by John
yeah.
Romita back in the day.
Yeah. See, the art style I really enjoy. I love the art style, the blockiness, the clunkiness, and stuff like that. I really love that. Like you said, it harkens back to the John Romita or oh, what's his name that did the
Steve
first
Ditko,
series. Steve Ditko. Steve Ditko. Yeah, it has
yeah.
that a little bit of that style, and I really truly love that. But then they add the computer digital crap, and it almost ruins it for me. Like when a car is going down in the background, or a building turns, it looks like something from GTA or something. It's just completely digitized, and it almost ruins it for me.
Right. I could see that. I
I
mean,
mean, if you're gonna have this style that harkens back to a different kind of day, then I mean, I understand that you want to get three dimensionality into your animation, and you want to have Peter Parker spinning around a lot, and all of this stuff. But I just wish that they could make it a little more seamless, and because it for me it's distracting.
no, that I feel you on that, and that's the real precarious thing about all those things. Like, because say like you were like saying like you really enjoyed the what if. Now, I
Right?
personally don't
You
like
don't
the
like
what
it?
if as much.
Yeah,
Now it's not to say I don't like it, right?
yeah.
But it's so glossy looking. It's
It
so
is.
like everything looks like chrome on that show or whatever.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
but I get why they do it, because they're like they're trying to achieve that Disney level princess animation in the faces. Okay, like
Yeah,
that
they're
whole thing.
definitely trying to get a realistic.
Like because Disney, like say, like Disney has this whole thing. Like when you look at the way they break down faces, like if you look at any Disney movie and look at their character sheets, like where they're like, oh, this is this character happy, sad, mad, glad, in love,
Right.
sad or whatever, and they do those face breakdowns, and you get that big emotionality that they're capturing, because that's what they're getting in each one of those shots. They're finding a peak moment to express that emotion, and that characters are they're, because animation is like the Greek sort of play stuff back in the day where they all wear masks. You know what I mean? So
Right,
you're
right.
you're acting from a booth and you're wearing this animated mask, and both of you are trying to act together. Like, and when it's done really well, like in great movies like The Lion King or Beauty and the Beast or even Miyazaki stuff, it's amazing or whatever. But it can be hard to mirror those things. And I'm just saying, like, I know that the what if thing is really trying to do that on a scale where they could still create it and still do it on a low enough budget where you're doing it for a TV audience, and because it costs so much money to do that on a film level. And I don't love it, but I also sympathize with the idea of like how hard it is to do that kind of thing. And out of all of them, I'd honestly say Blue Eye Samurai is probably the most
I
successful. It
I
mirrors
was
it
just
all
gonna
together.
say, what did you really think of the Blue Eyed Samurai animation? Because that it is truly amazing.
It's stunning, dude. And it's like I said, out of all of them, because they're all struggling with that same paradigm, like how to,
Yeah,
how to mirror this, because they all want it to look like a Disney film. You know what I mean? Like that's what Spider Verse is trying to look like. They're all trying to look, mirror that classic, Disney style, whether you're adding your new implications to it or not. What you're trying to mirror is that classic goodness, whether it's from the 90s or the 30s or the 40s or whatever one's your, cup of tea. That's what all the animators, on the film level doing the hand stuff are always chasing. And Blue Eye Samurai really almost, I mean, Blue Eye Samurai looks like Mulan, but it has like sex and killing in it. You know what I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
dude? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
it's
Last
gorgeous.
last year I was really torn when they had the Emmys as to what the best animated show was. I was truly torn because I loved Blue Eye Samurai, I loved the X-Men, and I loved Rain, their something Rain. Did you see that one?
I don't know what that is off the top of my head.
Something
What was it
Rain.
about?
It's like a Mobius. It looks a lot like a Mobius um,
Oh,
thing.
you mean oh that what was it called? I don't
It's
think
such a
Rain is the
crazy
name of it, but
something Rain. Yeah.
it's that one that takes place on the alien planet or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah. And
It's funny, you really
I
like
love
that
all
one a
of them.
lot.
Yeah.
I couldn't sit through that series because it looks like it does.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah,
See,
I
I
watched the
love
first
the
two
animation.
episodes and just like I really can't. I don't like, man, that Mobius stuff is too much for me, man. That whole like flat line
Yeah,
against flat line like that. Like,
yeah, yeah.
can't hardly handle that stuff,
So,
dude.
getting back to the Spider-Man, what did you think of his costume and stuff?
I thought that was all cool. I actually liked everything they did. I mean, like it's a cartoon, and they're just trying to set up some cool ideas. I really liked the art style. I thought the costume was a cool mixture of the original, concept because we're seeing him before he's, because like you said, they have all this sort of, history they built up in the films. So, in the films, it's like, especially in the recent ones, Peter's gotten his costume from Tony
Tony.
Stark.
Yeah,
So, we're seeing him beforehand. So it's cool. He's just got this kind of like sort of New York City looking inspired, hockey jersey thing going on with just kind of like a ski mask with the goggles, look like they might be handmade or like homemade, like, so you're like,
yeah.
okay, so the goggles and basically his, his little spider, slinger things. And that was cool too, that he literally has to, walk around with this compression tank, that he turns up
I
or turns down to,
I
get
love
his
that
revs,
part. I
Yeah,
love
right.
that part in his costume that he has the tanks on his back, and you know darn well that he's going to come to a point where the bad guy or whatever is going to cut the lines on his tanks and be like, "What are you going to do now?" So
Yeah,
I really love it.
I thought it was a very cool visual, and it's a cool story, and it feels real, and all those things work together. That's when like story and all that art come together and come alive. Like that's the
Yeah,
real interesting part of all that stuff when you're creating something new is, allowing yourself to breathe a little bit and like ideas like that to flourish and stuff. Like I thought it was cool. I liked everything. I know I've heard some people like complain that there was no Mary Jane present and that there was no Flash Thompson
right,
present.
right, right.
But I was seeing that the character who plays the jock kid, is what is it? His girl, the girl he's in love with, his her love interest guy or whatever. I can't think of
Yeah,
his name off the top
yeah.
of
I
my
can't
head.
remember his name either.
Franklin something.
Yeah,
But I know that that character is. This is a multiverse story. First of all, I want to say I think it is. Like it's like this is a Peter Parker 6616 universe story or something like that.
oh, you think
And
so?
yeah, I know that character, that teenage, kid who's the jock that he's saying that takes him under his wing. I know he's a version of Tombstone.
Oh,
Yeah. So I
see,
don't know if
I
he,
had a problem with no Flash Thompson too.
yeah, like, so I mean, there maybe this is only the first and second episode too,
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that kind of thing. Maybe they'll bring it in later, or maybe they'll put it in towards the end of the series. Because I mean, they didn't do much with Mary Jane in the first, you know, Tom, what's his name film either. You know what I mean? Like,
right, right,
they're
right.
just
Yeah,
kind of trying to introduce ideas, and just like I think with that film, they're just trying to kind of like be a little original, and you know what I mean, just do something a little different or whatever, and try and keep people on their toes. Everyone who's already
yeah,
seen the Tobey Maguire movies a million times, and the Andrew Garfield stuff, and I mean,
yeah.
like it's like
The reason
with
the
Batman,
reason I missed
everybody's seen it.
Yeah, the reason I missed Flash was so much is that I really like that he was like the arch nemesis of Peter Parker. So you have this whole dynamic of Spider-Man having all of these arch enemies, but you also have Peter Parker that has all these enemies, and I think that was like a big draw as to why people really like Spider-Man, because it wasn't just somebody in a costume fighting supervillains. It was also Peter Parker dealing with all of his financial problems, his school problems, and all of this stuff. So I really kind of missed the whole Flash thing. And Mary Jane, you can put a different love interest in anywhere. And I'm not really a huge Mary Jane fan anyway. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably definitely like something to consider, because like when it's done well and when the stories are written well, which I mean, my gosh, they aren't always. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
Spider-Man stories are horrible,
yeah,
but
yeah,
like there's the cool duality of like, say, okay, just like you were saying, like um, Flash Thompson is Peter Parker's villain. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
But Flash Thompson is also Spider Man's. He
Biggest
loves
fan.
Spider Man or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah, you know what I mean? So there's that weird duality that the character has to deal with, that Peter's always facing that, oh, as me, myself, this guy, he can't stand me. But when I put this mask on and pretend to be this guy, all of a
right,
sudden, I'm his biggest hero or whatever.
right, right,
So,
right.
you know what I mean? There's a weird psychology that's taking place there, because Peter is both halves of those things and is fully cognitively aware of that,
Yeah,
duality taking place, and has to deal with it on both sides of it, as it's taking place, and completely ignore the other side of the coin at any given time when it's taking place. You know what I mean? And things like
yeah.
that make for interesting stories.
How did you like the acting in it?
I thought everything was pretty good. Honestly, I really liked all, but I didn't even mind like his lesbian girlfriend, or you know what I mean? Like all
Yeah,
those like
yeah,
really kind of like woke things a little bit that they try to
yeah,
slide in there,
yeah,
because like, I mean, you just can't hardly avoid that kind of stuff nowadays. And I mean, I really don't have a huge problem with it if it's presented in a way that's, cognitively intuitive to the story. I mean, sometimes they'll introduce those things and it really doesn't make a lot of sense, other than just trying to say like, oh, hey, we want to put out here that this person does this and you need to know it, which is not like terribly, like the problem I have with that kind of stuff, and not to go on some big, stupid rant about that stuff, because people, their lives and what they do is completely their business. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And I,
yeah,
don't
yeah,
have a problem with whatever anybody does. But like, say, if if you have characters in a room, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, these three characters are, in an office and they're discussing a thing. And two of them are men and three of them are women. And it's like they're discussing a murder that took place, right? It's like
right.
the story doesn't stop and go, oh, and this one's gay. You know
Yeah,
what I
right,
mean?
right, right,
Like,
right, right.
if all the characters are heterosexual, they don't ever stop and go, hey, by the way, everyone in this room, we all like kissing girls. Got
Right.
it? Okay, let's move along. Or like two of them don't stop in the middle of the conversation and be like, okay, thanks, hon. Now let's have a kiss and now we'll move on to the story. But that's
Right.
kind of like what they do with gay characters a lot. You know what I mean? They'll just
Yeah.
sort of stop for a moment and point out, and be like, oh, by the way, as if you couldn't tell by the way we dress and make this character behave, what I mean, which you clearly can, a lot of the time, you know, we're going to stop and tell
Yeah.
you that this character is gay. Like I
Right.
was
Right.
just watching the that J.J. Abrams Batman animated series thing on Amazon Prime last night because I'm
Oh.
just a big kid, and mostly, I'll tell you right now, Alex, like on my Saturdays, I still get up at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I watch cartoons till about 1 o'clock in
That's
the
awesome.
morning. I do. It's just like a habit I've had my whole life because for 30 years they were on Saturdays, and you just get up and watch whatever was
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
and so on Saturdays I still want to watch. Sunday in the evenings, I watch a lot of documentaries because when I was a kid, that's what would be on TV a lot, at that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Oh
like
yeah.
I still fill those spaces up with the things that feel natural to me. So, like,
Yeah.
I watched a lot of cartoons, I sat and I watched Spider-Man. I watched, the X-Men. I watched, what else was cool? I watched, freaking Primal, with Yeni Tartakovsky and,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Samurai
Yeah.
Jack, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
everything
All
that
right.
I think is
So
super
I
cool.
so I want to get back to what you were touching on with the wokeness. How a big thing, which it was a small scene, but it kind of was a powerful one where uh, the boyfriend of what's her name and he's his partner in science. I can't remember his name. But he's
Yeah.
walking home and he's walking through the inner city, and then he doesn't actually get stopped by the police, but the police like have their blue lights on and they look at each other and they kind of slow everything down. So I mean that's a huge I don't know if you would call it a Black Lives Matter moment or
I would say
a
I don't know if I would call that wokeness to me. I just say like that's a very honest portrayal of what a person's life like that is probably like.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because
definitely.
I don't think well the NWA movie was woke, and they showed a
Right,
lot of that. You know what I mean?
right. Well, it was still I definitely think it may not have been woke, but it was definitely they were pointing it out, and they were pointing out a social thing, not in the whole show, not even in both episodes, but just kind of in that one few minutes, and
I
I
think
thought
it
it
was
was
a
good.
pretty. Yeah, I thought it was good too. Because I mean, like I said, it's a film's like just like an honest portrayal. Because what they're trying to show is like this dude's going out of his way to try hard, and that's the people like that, they break away from the poverty and stuff like that. I
Right,
mean, it can be
right,
done. People do it, it's not easy. Life is
right,
insanely difficult and it's super hard. When that guy's, they're showing that he has a family that he loves. He has a family that loves him. He
right, and
is
I don't think they're
working
in
hard and
poverty.
taking, yeah, I mean, there definitely are, but they're definitely, working to,
Right,
what I mean,
they're
to
working
survive,
class.
Yeah. I mean, he's in a scholarship school for geniuses or whatever, you know what
Right,
I
right,
mean? Like, so, I mean, clearly the kid's very bright. He's an awesome athlete, but he still has to take, a train and two buses to get home. You know what I mean?
right, right,
Where
right, right,
Peter, walks around a handful of blocks. You know what I mean?
right,
And
right.
Peter's living in poverty to a certain level. You know what I mean? He's not living in, I mean, he lives in an apartment with his grandma, on like
Yeah,
whatever the
yeah,
13th floor or 18th floor or something like that. That's
yeah,
not where the
yeah.
rich people go, like, I mean, he's the same thing. He's a genius kid in a scholarship school, and I mean, those kids are all there because how brilliant they are and how like the level of academic excellence that they've achieved. You know what I mean? And
Right,
that's cool to show that, oh, even though this guy is like, he's in this school for kids, a lot of kids that are around that probably are very rich, and do have a lot of money probably, but he's, going through a lot to maintain his life. And I thought it was a pretty honest portrayal of what probably a lot of people's lives, might have been like or might be like right now as they're going through those kind of things. You know what I mean?
right, right. Um, Talking about that, how do you feel about Norman Osborn being black?
I don't really have a problem with those kind of things. Like, you know, like a secondary character like that. Like, okay, I mean, he was always. I always felt like the Osborns were ethnic characters. Like, I personally always thought horns were Jewish. Okay. And I
Yeah,
honestly always
yeah.
thought that they were meant to be portrayed looking Jewish. And that's why their hair was drawn the way it was by John Romita Sr.
Right,
It
right.
has like the hair is very particular to those two characters. They're the only ones in the series that are really ever drawn that way, other than a handful of other times, one or two characters might pop in with it. If you look, it's essentially, a very, curly, you know what I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
Jewish
a tight.
hair or whatever.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
yeah, that's cut very short and very tight and brushed very tight against the head or whatever. And it was a pretty common style in the 40s and 50s and 60s. And he was just trying to find a way to represent that visually because he's trying to, show a sort of a continuity of ethnic layer to his stories because they take place in New York City where there's blacks and Jews and Asians and all
right.
kind of different versions of the Caucasian and you know what I mean. And he's just
Yeah,
trying to do his best as an artist to portray some of these different genuine aesthetics that they have. And I don't really have a problem with a culture being switched for another type of subculture like that. I mean, like it, a black person being changed for an ethnic person. I mean, I don't know if they have a problem, that kind of audience. Like had they changed it out for an Asian person, like would you really have a problem? It's like I don't know. I have to see the way they approach it and the way they do it before I could ever sit back and say like, oh, that was done completely wrong. You know what I mean?
right,
So
right,
I thought
right.
personally that it was pretty cool. I mean, I didn't have a problem with it at all. And even the character, still both of them still remain fairly honest to their original designs. They're not, regardless of the different shade of skin that they were colored with, you know what I mean? Their designs are not
Yeah,
terribly far off than the way they're originally conceived. And,
yeah,
as long as you stick within those kind of realms, like I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with Miles Morales being Spider-Man. Like, like I like things that are good. And if you
yeah.
can,
That's exactly it. Um,
make
like,
something good, I don't care what it could be an Asian
yeah,
Spider-Man. It could be, whatever, like
right, right. And
make it
you have
good.
to remember, these aren't real people. They're comic book characters. So really, you can do whatever you want with them. Um,
And not just that, but they're meant to be reinvented for each
they're meant to be
generation. They
reinvented.
don't
Yeah,
belong to a single generation. They're like Greek mythology. And they can
right.
always be, replied to to feel the idealistic concepts of whatever generation is growing up to, learn about them and, experience them.
Right. Yeah. 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 Definitely. And everyone's going to pick out um, their favorite Spider-Man, whether it's Miles or whether it's Peter or it's or Riley or whoever other Spider-Mans. There's a million different Spider-Mans now in a million different universes. So,
Oh man!
or
And if
any
you
other
count the
character.
Clone Wars, if you want to
Right.
count the Clone story stuff, there's
Yeah.
even more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
so
So,
ridiculous.
but I mean, people are going to pick out their favorite ones, and I think just not follow the ones that they're not into. So yeah, I mean, they're going to do different stuff to try to attract more viewers and readers and stuff. And if you either like it or you don't.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's the cool thing about Spider-Man is, if you don't like one version, there's going to be another one tumbling down the line, not too far
Yeah,
away.
yeah,
Like there's always going to be something cool, new, and interesting because he's just one of those characters that's utterly charming, and it's
yeah, yeah,
the simplicity of the character. Like it's just who he is or whatever, and the idea behind it. The other, here's one other thing I'll tell you what I absolutely loved about this show. I love the opening sequence. Like, dude, that whole like where they incorporate the 1960s like Spider-Man theme song into that like
right,
rap
right,
piece or whatever, and then
yeah,
how they show all the different like art and costume style like homages in the little like side box, and how when it ends it has the 15-cent marker up on the side. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh,
That's definitely
dude,
cool. Um,
I can't
but
tell
talk.
you like how much joy I get from that thing. That was awesome.
Yeah, yeah. But talking about the acting, I really thought the acting was really solid for basically everybody. And it's weird because when the acting is really good, you kind of don't notice it because they're doing the voice acting and it's going along with the animation and stuff. But when it's bad, then it really sticks out like a sore thumb. Like I was watching last night, I was watching um, Crisis on Infinite Earths, one from the DC, thing.
Yeah, yeah, I've
And
watched all those.
yeah, yeah. And they were pretty good. Like, but some of the acting, especially Iris West, I thought she was so horrible. Like
Right.
it almost ruined the whole experience of all the movies. And it just really, like, the acting really is a big deal, until it isn't a big deal until it's bad, I think. And then it just can ruin anything.
Yeah, I think that's true. And anything like that's always going to pull you out of the experience. I mean, that's why I think that's why like a lot of the animes just use the same five dudes or the same 10 people, you know what I
Right.
mean, again and
Yeah.
again and again. Because once that person sort of has a handle on the type of character it is, it's just easy for them to replicate that over and over and over, like whereas, with a lot of moderner stuff, they're always trying to find, can you imagine trying to recast that X-Men thing? Like how hard did they have to hit their voice things? And I know
Oh
like
yeah.
at least
You mean
five of those
X-Men?
people are not the same
Yeah.
person, like you know what I mean? But they sound almost like identical to the person they're emulating, you know?
Oh yeah. I mean the voice, that's the thing. The voice actors are, if they're animation voice actors, I think they're just fantastic. But I think some of these regular actors, they get these regular actors and then they're not so great.
Yeah. I mean, it just depends.
Possibly.
Like I said, because it's like that Greek theater thing where it's the mask and then the performance working together. And if they
Yeah.
don't really, it can, yeah, the whole thing falls apart or whatever. And it's really easy for that to happen. I mean, a
Right.
lot of
Right.
movies, they put a lot of work into it and then it just doesn't really come together for them in the box office, like movies like Atlantis, movies like, Treasure Planet, like where they had all this vibe and put all this work into it, but it's the performances and then the whole look of
Yeah.
it just doesn't
Exactly.
come together, at some point, and then stuff like Spider Verse where it just does beautifully, it's just
Yeah.
all it's just like anything. Either you got it and you have the idea in your head and you know what you're doing, or you're struggling the whole time to find it, and you're probably not likely to discover it along the way if you don't already have it tight at the beginning. You know what I mean? Just my
Right.
opinion.
Right. Yeah. That
It's
might
like,
have a lot to do with the director and the producer of the
yeah,
show.
absolutely. Like, I don't think we got Star Wars Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi because he was making them up as he went along. You know what I mean? We got
Right.
all those because at the very beginning, he sat down and he wrote that story, right? And
Yeah.
then goes, oh, this is too big to be one movie. It has to be three movies. And then it's like, okay, I have three good ideas and I can do three good stories based on it. He wasn't like, I have a cool idea. It's this or that. Maybe we do this, maybe we do that. And then at the end they
Right.
go, what should we do now? Like, you know what I mean? Because that's the thing that most sequel films are facing is they don't like, okay, like if like, studio was to come to me and be like, hey, we want you to, write a sequel for for the next Terminator movie. I'll just say, let's throw a franchise out there that no one could get right. You know what I mean?
You're right.
That they've tried
Right.
to reboot a dozen times now and no one can do. Not even the guy that invented it. His movie was
Right.
terrible.
Right.
Um, and it's like, okay, if you gave that thing to me, I sit down and I write you three films. You know what I mean? One that tells the beginning of that story, one that tells the middle of that story, one that tells the end of that story, and then it all ties into that first story flawlessly. It has to. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you don't do that, then I'm not interested. If they came to me for a Batman, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna write a Batman movie with the Joker, but he's going to be the villain in three movies, like the way Darth Vader is the villain in three movies. Like, I'm not going to do three different movies with three different villains. Like, that doesn't interest me. What I'm going to do is tell one big epic story, you know what I mean? That'll make perfect
Yeah.
sense over films, where the characters can have a moment to breathe and become things and move on along in a journey. And that's what makes things when you have it planned out and when you know what you're doing and where you're going and the purpose of
Yeah.
it all.
Yeah.
When you're flying by the
Unfortunately,
seat of your pants.
well,
You get
unfortunately, though, they do if they do that and the movie sucks, then or isn't well received, then they're kind of stuck and they won't make another one.
Well, that's fine,
So
okay, but at least if it is good, you already know where you're going. And the
yeah,
thing is, that's just like what I've said before. Things are either good or they aren't. You know what I mean? You either
yeah,
know what you're making is good because it is good, you know what I mean? Or you know what you're making isn't because you're looking at it and you go, this is not good enough. You know what I mean? Because you're gonna know, you know what I mean? Like you're a
yeah,
person, you're entertained. You know what it feels like when you sat through dozens of good movies. You know what I mean? Like
right,
some of them, you know, have been great. Some of them are okay, but you all come back to them again and again and again because of how good they are. You know what I mean? Like
right,
it's like a good movie doesn't have to be fun, and a fun movie doesn't have to be good. But they're both good films in their both ways. The best films incorporate both of those things. You know,
right,
like
right,
something like Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is like a fantastic story. It's also super fun. It has some fun comedic moments, where the characters, don't have to be so grim and so gritty about things or whatever. And it's a fun film as well as a great film. Um,
right.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure. You know, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Tim Burton's very first directorial film. It's an incredibly fun movie. You know what I mean? It's an
Right,
incredibly good movie. It's not necessarily just a comedy. It's not necessarily just an adventure, but it's all these things put together that make it such a remarkable, fun film experience to sit through.
right,
You know what
right.
I mean?
Yeah.
Like movie, like I recently sat through. I mean, I'm probably going to get skewered uh, by anybody that hears this, and that's that. Uh, I think the Joel Schumacher Batman movies might be my favorite Batman films,
I
dude.
love
Like,
the show. Well, I love the first one with
dude, like I
Tommy Lee
recently
Jones.
sat through both of those movies, um, and I have to say that I think the that those are like the most fun films. You know what I mean, dude? Like,
Yeah, well,
uh, they're just like they're so fun, dude. They have the best soundtrack. Period. Out of every
yeah,
Batman movie, they probably have the best sounding theme song, and
yeah,
like, dude, they're just fun. Okay, those movies are super fun to watch, and they look ridiculously cool. Like I know they're like a hyped up version of the TV show. You know what I mean? Like they have that look of where everything is just shiny and everything is bright or whatever. And I know they're silly. Like they're, to a certain extent, they're not taking themselves very, they're not asking a lot of you to, to get
yeah,
into the story or whatever. But
yeah.
at the same time, like their version of Gotham City is like the coolest version ever put on film. You know what I mean? Like,
It's pretty
and
cool.
I love like it's sort of like Fritz Lang's Metropolis. It's like the
Oh yeah,
buildings are all kind of like 600 stories tall, and they have like bridges,
neon.
where the cars go from one side of the building to another. So like there's all these sky bridges that the cars are driving across, and it
Yeah,
has all
yeah,
this giant Gothic like architecture and huge like sculptures everywhere. You know what I mean? And it's a really cool looking version of Gotham. And then it doesn't take itself so serious. Like it is a comic for God's sakes, and it's a fantasy world. And dude, like I love, I know people can't stand Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, but I seriously love his,
I thought he was pretty
like the
good.
way, well, just I love his costume and I love
Yeah,
like the way it looks when he freezes people, like the way the freeze ray looks, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like it's so fun. Like they don't take it that seriously, but at the same time, they make it look great, like when he freezes the city at the end, it's so ridiculous, but it looks fantastic. You know what I mean? It just
right.
artistically, it looks gorgeous, the whole thing, And it's like, dude, that's what comic books were like, and in the Silver Age, especially. They were very like, I'll freeze the city and hold the world ransom and that kind of thing. Like, and
Right,
those
right,
movies portray that stuff like really cool, and they're just fun. You know what I mean? They're just fun to watch. They artistically they look really great. It's like if someone was to ask you like, "Oh, which Batmobile would you like want to own?" And of course, like everyone's going to say like the Tumbler from, the Christopher Nolan films, but it's like it's the I like the big long Batmobile that George Clooney drives in freaking you know, Batman and
Right.
Robin or whatever. You know, like people are all like rolling over in their like graves right now listening to me say this stuff. It's pretty great.
Hey, no, it's whatever. It's like I said, people are gonna pick and choose the things that they like and the things they don't like. That's everybody's prerogative.
But yeah, I thought the new Spider-Man thing was pretty like I thought it was super fun. I'm like really looking forward to the rest of the episodes. And normally like when I really enjoy something like this, I only watch one episode a week because like I try to
Right.
bleed it out as long as I
Yeah.
can because I'm a
Yeah.
from that era or whatever. And the only
Yeah.
reason why I watched the second episode is because we were going to do this show today. You know what I mean? And I wanted to be able to talk about it with some authority
Right.
or
Right.
whatever. So I was like, now I have to wait until Wednesday to see another episode.
So all right. So let's kind of wrap this up a little bit, but
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
talk about the big spoiler at the end of episode 2, which is that Norman Osborn knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Yeah, like I said, I think they're just kind of like portraying Norman as the Tony Stark character here at the beginning. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like clearly, like Peter's probably going to get his real Spider-Man clothes from Norman Osborn in this version. You know what I mean?
Oh, you think so? You well,
Oh,
he's
if you
gonna
look
be the
at the
green.
trailer, no,
I
go
haven't
ahead.
seen a lot from the trailer. But he's gonna turn bad, right?
I think so. I mean, that's something you could probably put a attack into and say, yeah, for sure, Norman Osborn's probably going to be the bad guy. But like I said, once again, this is probably like an attempt to try and keep things fresh and try and keep audiences interested in guessing at what's really taking place in the film. You know what I mean? But
Right.
yeah, like according to what it looks like in the trailer, it looks like like Norman Osborn is going to be the Tony Stark character at the beginning, and he's helping Peter become Spider-Man, makes the Spider-Man outfit for him. It makes him this cool looking blue and black and white looking thing, which I think looks really great. Like I'm looking forward to seeing it in the episode where it pops up. I'm guessing maybe somewhere in the middle of the next episode or by the end of the next episode or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll have to see where it goes. You know what I mean? Because I mean Harry Osborn or Norman Osborn, always kind of finds out that Peter is Spider-Man. You know what I mean? At some point in their
Yeah,
story
I
arc.
guess he does. Towards the end of the first movie, I guess he
Yeah.
does.
So I mean, just like if you just in genuinely in every Spider-Man Norman Osborn story arc, at some point he becomes aware that Peter is Spider-Man and begins to hound him as the Green Goblin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I
Yeah.
don't think like the very idea that that we know or establishing that he will know that who Spider-Man is like anyway infers on the idea that he could become his worst villain or whatever. But we'll have to see what they do. You just never know. Like maybe they're gonna, you know what I mean, take it in a completely different direction we haven't seen before, and
Yeah.
still
Yeah, that's
remain
true.
honorable to those, original storylines. I mean, just who knows? I love those printouts you made, dude. Those are fantastic,
Yeah.
dude. Like
Yeah.
so cool.
They're nice.
Yeah, make sure you want to have like one of those. One of those up like when we started. Make sure we have one of those up when we end, so that hopefully that ends up being the like the cue picture or whatever. You know what
Well,
I mean
I
when
can I
this is
can
sitting
put
up
that.
online.
No, I can put that in afterwards.
Okay. Well, yeah, make sure you do that because that way people, kind of know what we're looking at here
Yeah.
and what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Oh, definitely.
Flick through their feeds or whatever. But are we getting ready to get out of here? Because you should touch base and talk about your comics real quick before we do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'd like to show you my own work, which is not random access right here. This is the Death Knights. And you can get this at my website, alexanderturbin.com. And you can also get Mutandis at alexanderturbin.com. But also you can get random access at patreon.com/alexanderturbin. Or you can go to my website, like I said. So there you go.
Okay, real quick before we go, I just want to touch base and get like people a little bit excited about a project that Alex and I are working on with a bunch of other comic book creators. And this right here is the cover for our upcoming release that we're working on. We're probably going to put this up on Kickstarter, and we're trying to get people excited about it. And this is the Entropy Alliance, and this is
Yeah.
like classic comic book stuff that you don't really see independent people tackling all that much. But we just thought we'd have fun and do like the superhero thing and do like that whole like end of the universe kind of like big superhero story. So like just trying to get people excited about this stuff. There's the cover for number 1. This is the color guide. And if you think this looks cool, wait till you see the digital colors from Jake Quirk, Mangle Dangle on Instagram. I mean, he has done colors on this cover that are just going to blow people's brains apart when they see it. And this is a full on wraparound cover, front and back. And we're looking to really just like, give you guys like some real serious 90s comic goodness. So keep on the lookout for Entropy Alliance coming soon from Access Comics.
Yeah, we're going to definitely be pushing that the next couple months. Like you said, we're going to do a Kickstarter, and we're just going to go out all out media blitz.
Yeah. So just getting you guys excited for that. So I hope
Yeah.
you guys didn't, have to listen to us blow on too long about this. We just want to touch base on something that we thought was cool and new and interesting, and talk about things we liked and things we didn't like. I hope you guys were cool tuning in. I hope you guys enjoy our video on a Sunday. Everybody likes a cool video about comic books on a Sunday.
Oh yeah. So we will. We have a regular Wednesday episode. So check us out at about 2:00, 2:30 on a Wednesday Eastern time. And what time is that for you?
Yeah, it's
Western
going to be
time.
11:30 West Coast. We're going to say
11:30.
1:00, 1:30 Eastern, or 1:30 Central, and then it's going to
Yeah.
be 2:30 on Eastern.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching, and
Keep
think
on
of some
creating, you
questions.
guys.
Yep. Keep on
Yeah.
creating.
And please, if you follow, subscribe. We definitely appreciate that. If you watch this video to the end, it helps us push this video out to other comic book creators and other people who are interested in comics, and that's going to be helpful too. And we appreciate you guys watching the whole video, and thanks a lot for staying and for stopping by.
Yep. Thanks a lot.